a different house, or I'm going to take a different job, or whatever it is. And that is part of movement. But a lot of the times, the movement that we're called to is not physical. It's spiritual, it's mental, it's emotional. It is making progress, not being stuck where you are, being able to look and say, wow, in this past year or 2 years or 5 years, I moved, I progressed. There was transformation. I'm not who I was before. That is a core part of what we are called to do. There needs to be movement. And simplicity is so important if you want to see actual movement, if you want to see actual growth and change and transformation. If you can keep things simple, it is going to make a huge difference. That's what movement means. If I can really make it simple for you guys, it is that you are pursuing God and growing in your faith. You are changing, and you are not who you once were. And this is what Jesus taught. His entire ministry was movement, change. When he took on someone as his disciple, the expectation was that they were going to be a different person after he got done with them. And not like maybe in 10 years, not eventually, like right before you die, you'll see some growth. It was like, no, if you are going to follow me, you are going to be a new creation. You're going to be different. You are going to change. There's going to be movement in your life. That is a core part that we've kind of lost as the church in America almost. We've lost that part of that expectation that if we're following Jesus, that there's going to be real movement and change and transformation in our life. Now, yes, it is a process, and Jesus talks about sanctification and it taking time and that we're continually growing, but we can expect that if we are following Jesus, things are going to move. Again, maybe not physical. I'm not saying, hey, if you follow Jesus, you got to move to a different city or anything like that. It's in your life. There should be progress. There should be change. Something should be different. In fact, Christianity, in its core, really is not a religion. It's a movement. Because like religion is like kind of stay where you are. We're going to draw some lines around you, and you just stay within the lines. That's kind of the heart of religion. Follow our rules, stay within the lines. And Jesus taught, like, go be who you were actually made to be. Be someone that you never thought you could be. Be bigger than you ever thought. Move, go, grow. Even his disciples, he sent them out to go do things when, like, if you're reading the Bible, you're like, Jesus, they're not ready yet. They're still arguing about who's the best. Why are you sending them out? Because that's the heart of Jesus. Go, move, be something, grow. And last week we talked about clarity, and we talked about how scary and frustrating it can be when you don't know where to go, when you feel like something's not right, I need to change something, this just is not how things are supposed to be, but I can't see to know where I'm supposed to go. I don't know the change I'm supposed to make, and how that's scary to be in that fog and to not have that clarity. And that is very frustrating. But it's also incredibly frustrating when you can see where to go, when you finally have that clarity to know, here's the change I need to make, here's where I need to go, here's where I need to grow and be transformed, and yet somehow you can't move. You can't get there. You're stuck. The Apostle Paul talked about this, and he was like, I know what I want to do, but I can't do it. That's really hard, and that's really frustrating, and that can completely tear your heart out when you're like, I see where I need to grow. I see how I have to change, and I can't do it. I'm stuck. That movement is completely eluding me. That's a hard place, because when you can't move, that's called being stagnant. Have you guys heard that word before, stagnant? It's when something isn't moving, and so it kind of gets nasty. It starts to get a smell to it. This is one of my favorite examples because it's just a very, not visual, it's a very sensory example, but if you take a washcloth and you get it nice and wet and then just kind of put it in a ball and throw it in the corner of the sink, come back a week later and take a big smell of that. It's pretty nasty because that's what happens when something is stagnant. You need new water coming through and old water leaving. That's why if you're out in the wilderness and you want water, finding a pond that is just sitting completely still is probably not where you want to drink from, because anything that is stagnant starts to get diseased, starts to get funky, starts to smell bad. And it's the same for us as Christians. When we're stuck, when we're not moving, when we're not growing or progressing in any way, we get that spiritual funk to us. And I've been there where it is just like, I'm stagnant. I'm not moving. I'm not growing. This is what Zephaniah chapter 1, verse 12 says. It says, "At that time I will search Jerusalem with lamps and punish those who are complacent, who are like wine left on its dregs." Basically, it's when wine just sits there, it's no longer good. You've got to actually you cannot just have wine sitting there. And God was basically like, this is not what I want from you. I don't want people who are complacent. I want people who are moving. And that's what I've said all the time. When it comes to my walk with God, I would rather, if I view my walk with God as a ladder, I would rather be on the second rung but moving than be on the 10th rung but stuck. It's like, it doesn't really matter where you're at. It matters, are you moving and are you growing and are you actually changing? We need movement in our life. We were made for that. In fact, that's one of the reasons why, if you look at churches, when there's a new church plant, which we were a church plant not that long ago, it grows really fast and really exciting things happen because it has this built-in movement. It's new. It's not stagnant because everything is brand new, and so you have this movement, and it's really healthy. But that's where you can also, when you see a church that's been around for like 100 years, it can be really hard because there's almost that built-in desire to just kind of stay where you are, and that stagnancy starts to come in. And so hopefully I've kind of made the case of how important it is to truly move and grow, not just as a church, but as Christians ourselves, to be like, I need to be constantly growing and moving. But the question is, why do we struggle with this so much? Why are so many of us like Paul, where we're like, okay, I finally have the clarity to see where I need to go and to see how I need to change, but I just can't do it? Why do we struggle with this so much? And I think a big part of it is because when we struggle to move, we tend to think the problem is all of the barriers that are in front of us. So like, if I'm here and I want to get there, the problem is there's so many roadblocks and barriers in between here and there that's what's holding me back. And so we try to focus on clearing out as many barriers as we can, because if we can finally have a nice, clean, open path, then we'll finally get there. So we put all our focus onto what's in front of us. But the problem is this cannot clearly be right. Because when you look at the Apostle Paul, as well as all of the examples in the Bible, roadblocks never prevented anybody from moving where God was asking them to go. Paul, when he was talking to the Corinthians, talked about all the roadblocks that were in front of him from getting to them. This is 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 25. It says, 3 times I was beaten with rods, once I was pelted with stones, 3 times I was shipwrecked, I spent a night and a day in the open seas. Those are a lot of roadblocks. Those are a lot of barriers. That's a lot of reasons to not be able to make it there, yet somehow this did not prevent him from getting where he needed to go. And if we did a whole series on overcomers, how if you're going to be used by God, there's going to be obstacles that you have to overcome. We do not see this in the Bible when God asks you to move and grow and progress, barriers being able to stop you. They're just something that if you're obeying God, you can overcome. We see clearly in the Bible that barriers and roadblocks are not a reason for stagnancy. You will absolutely overcome. If God is calling you to go there, there is no roadblock or barrier that will be able to stop you. That is not the reason that you can't move. In fact, there's an anonymous quote that is one of my favorites, and it says this: if video games have taught me anything, it's that if you encounter enemies, then you're going in the right direction. Now, this is a true story because there's some people actually in this congregation that I play video games with. And I tell you, in real life, I get lost all the time. But I also get lost in video games all the time. So even when I'm playing video games, I'm constantly lost, and I get made fun of for it. But do you know how I actually know how to find my way? Is I just look for new enemies, because that means this must be the right way to go. Roadblocks and barriers and enemies in your way are not the reason that you're not moving. In fact, those are just indications that you're going the right way. If you're trying to make movement and progress, and there's no roadblocks and there's no barriers and there's no enemies, then chances are that's probably not even the way you're supposed to be going anyways. When you obey God, there's going to be those problems. And so oftentimes it's like, well, I'll be able to move once I clear everything out of my way. And you're never going to, because where God's going to call you to go, there's always going to be barriers. So you just stay there. So the truth is that we lack movement for the most part because we're stuck where we are. Not that there's barriers in front of us, is that we are actually chained down to where we are, and we're not able to move past it. This is Isaiah chapter 43, verses 18 and 19. It says, "Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I'm doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it?" Oftentimes, the reason we can't move forward is because we can't let go of how things are right now. I'm going to blow your mind with the concept. You cannot go somewhere new and stay where you are. I know that's mind-blowing, but that's the reality of it. If you cannot let go of where you are, you cannot move to somewhere new. Now, that's physical, but that's also emotional and spiritual and mental and all of those things. And the hard thing is there's all sorts of coping mechanisms and comfort things and vices that have given us some sense of comfort in our life. And you cannot move and grow without giving those things up, because you cannot go somewhere new without giving up where you already are. And the reality is, when we are stagnant and when we lack movement, it is not because of all of those nasty roadblocks and barriers and enemies in our way. It is the chains that are saying, no, let's just stay and keep things how they are. I don't want to give this up. And that's the reality of why movement is so hard. And the reality is, for most of us, we're actually in a trap, and we don't know it. Because when you think of a trap, most of us tend to think of like mouse traps, where it's like it kills you when you get trapped in it. But that's really pretty rare. The majority of all traps are snare traps, where they are not trying to kill you. They don't even want to hurt you. The goal is to just hold you where you are. That's the whole goal of a snare. And in the Bible, when it talks about a trap, it almost always specifically says a snare, which is not meant to hurt you, not meant to kill you, just meant to hold you where you are. That's the whole goal of it. In Job chapter 18, verse 9 says, "A trap seizes him by the heel, a snare holds him fast." Doesn't say it hurts you, doesn't say it kills you or maims you, it just holds you where you are. And that's the best trap, because a hunter doesn't need the trap to kill you. The hunter just needs the trap to hold you, because once he gets there, he can kill you himself, because you're not going anywhere. And so many of us are held, our feet are held where we are by a snare, and we don't even know it yet. Because again, we've convinced ourselves the problem is all of these barriers, all of these enemies. Once I can clear the way, once the path is really nice and clear, then I can move. But the reality is, those were never going to stop you anyways. If God's calling you to go there, if it's a growth that he's calling you to go, they were never going to stop you. The problem is that you are trapped. You are stuck where you are because you can't let go of how things are right now. And do you know what one of the best traps there is? One of the things that holds you where you are more than almost anything else, especially in our culture right now, is complexity. Because when life gets incredibly complicated, we freeze. Have you guys ever had that experience with you, where it's like, if you get asked one question, you're like, okay, I can answer that. But when someone comes and it's like, this is wrong and that's wrong, and you got to choose this color, and you freeze. You're like, your brain just shuts down. It's too much, so I'm just going to stop and stay where I am because I can't think through all of this, so I'm just going to stay. The enemy loves to use complexity to just get you stuck where you are, because when things feel super chaotic and very complicated, the safest thing is to just sit and just stay. This is one of the reasons why Jesus kept things so simple, is because he wanted people to have the freedom to make a decision and move. He didn't sit here and say, okay, you got to choose to follow me, so you got to choose this, and this, and then make sure you have this figured out and that, because everyone would have just froze. He's like, do you want everlasting water? Do you want water that you'll never thirst again? Do you want to know me? Then follow me. Simple. Make a decision. Move. Go. It's kind of like, imagine if you were thinking about buying a new house. You're like, my house doesn't fit for my needs all that well. It's a little smaller, it's a little big, or whatever. And, again, this is a scenario. Interest rates are really low, so it makes sense to buy a house, get a lower interest rate. The time is now to move. So you look for a house, and you're like, I found it. Perfect. And let's imagine this scenario, you're downsizing. Maybe you're an empty nester, you don't need the house that you need, so you're going to downsize, you find the perfect house. It's time to move. It's time to take the step. You get back to your house and realize you have a huge basement, multiple garages, an attic that is just full of stuff that you have not looked at or organized in 25 years, and you're going to have to go through everything, decide what to keep, what to throw away, if you're going to give it away, get it all organized. There's going to be that temptation in the back of your head to go, maybe I just stay, right? Maybe I just stay. Maybe I just don't deal with this and I just stay put. Even though it's good for you to go, that's the right move. It's like, I got to do all this. I got to figure all this out. You know what? I'm just going to stay. I'm just going to hang out. But now imagine that same scenario. You had done the work of simplifying already. And you had anything you didn't want is thrown out. Everything that you want is organized and put into totes. What are the odds that you actually make the move when it's the right time? Way higher, because simplicity lets you move. It lets you go. Complexity just makes you feel trapped and stuck, like, I can't move. I would have to deal with all this stuff if I did that. It's the same with our heart. This is why if I go back to the story from last week of the rich young ruler, where he's like, what do I need? I need to add something. And Jesus is like, you're right, you lack one thing. You have to sell everything you own and follow me. And we talked last week about, it's not that having things is wrong. It's that Jesus understood that you are not going to move if you have all that stuff. You got to simplify. You got to keep things simple, and then you're going to be free to move. You're not going to follow me until your life is way simpler than it is right now. And this is why Jesus constantly is teaching simplicity, is telling people, let go of all that. Let all of that go. You don't need it. Why, even when he was talking to Mary and Martha, he's like, very few things are needed. In fact, only one thing is because the simpler that you allow your life to be, the more free you are to move and grow. And again, I'm not talking about physical. I know those are the examples that I gave, are moving houses and moving cities, but this is even in your life, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. We need to be moving and growing. But the more complicated we let life get, whether it's spiritual or mental or emotional, the less likely we are to be able to move, and the more likely we are to be trapped in place because we don't want to deal with the complexity. And really, that's today, if I can just encourage you guys to do anything, allow simplicity to give you the freedom to move and grow and be transformed, to actually follow Jesus and move from where you are to where he is calling you to go. Because so many of us are stuck in a cycle of thinking and feeling. Have you guys ever noticed that? If you've really taken your thoughts and laid them out of, why am I processing this situation this way? This person said this, which really isn't even a big deal. Why do my thoughts always go through this same loop and this same cycle? It's because we're trapped. We're stuck. We're replaying the same thoughts, the same feelings over and over again because we're trapped. Jesus does not want us to stay where we are. in our thoughts, in our mind, in our emotions, in our spiritual life, anything. Jesus always wanted freedom. That's why he died on the cross, was to set you free. But if we want to get unstuck, we have to allow Jesus to simplify what the enemy has made complicated. Something that I'm still working on, and I'm not very good at it yet, you can ask Les, and she can confirm it, is to go through that process of whenever anything feels just so complicated. And it's every day, something happens where I'm like, oh my, so complicated, how am I going to deal with this? Is to like actually challenge myself and be like, it's not. According to Jesus, it's not. Nothing is complicated according to Jesus. He made everything simple for us. The question is, am I going to let go of the way I've always thought about this, the way I've always dealt with this, the way that I've always felt about this, all of that, and instead embrace how Jesus taught it, how he thought about it? Because to him, everything was simple. Everything made sense. Everything was clear. And he moved. Man, he made progress. Things changed. And the people who spent time with him and thought the way that he thought, they changed and they moved. And for us, it really is to that point. Nothing's that complicated. It really isn't. The enemy wants to make life complicated. But Jesus has already given us everything we need for life to be very, very simple. I mean, he said right to Mary, very few things are needed. In fact, only one thing is really needed. And so for me, I'm learning and I'm practicing taking responsibility for if things feel very complicated, it's because I am not believing something that Jesus has said. Because if I believed everything that Jesus said, things wouldn't feel that complicated at all. This is where if you go to the psalmist, Psalm chapter 116, verse 16, this is how simple it is. Truly I am your servant, Lord. I serve you just as my mother did. You have freed me from my chains. That's simple. I'm going to obey you. That's how simple life is. And I'm going to be free to do that. And I'm not going to let anything become complicated. And that's where, if I can just encourage you guys today, if you feel like you are in a snare, if you feel trapped, if you feel like the complexity of life has you just stuck, there is freedom from that. Jesus can give you that simplicity and trust and peace that you need to be able to shed yourself from those chains that are holding you where you are. Do not allow the enemy to make complicated what God has made simple. And that's easier said than done because we live especially, and I know I've said this a couple of times, but we live in a culture where it's like you need to be on top of everything. You need to make everyone happy. You need to anticipate everyone's needs and already know what to do. You need to make sure that no one's ever upset or misunderstands you in any way. And if you are living like that, there is no way for life to not be complicated because you are trying to be in control of everything. But that's the beauty of having a faith in Jesus Christ is you do not need to be in control. He's in control. You can let go of all of that and you can keep things simple. Something I do to help myself with this when I feel just frozen and locked up is I just actually go through the simple gospel and just talk it through. So I'm going to talk it through right now just to reconnect our own brains with it. The simple gospel is this. We were made to serve and worship God. We chose to disobey and to fall into sin. And because of that, we are all born into sin. We had no hope. Jesus, desiring for us to be reconnected with God, to be able to be one with God again, came to earth, humbled himself, gave up everything that we had no right to even ask him to, died a horrific death on the cross after living a perfect life so that we could be whole and free, no guilt, no shame. And if we accept that gift, we have the privilege of getting to serve in his kingdom while here on earth before we eventually either die or he returns and we spend eternity with him in heaven in perfect peace. That's the simple gospel. And the enemy is going to work for the rest of your life to complicate that, to make you walk in strife of, but if I don't control this, and if this goes wrong, and if that goes wrong, but the heart of it is, It's already been simplified. It's already been done. You can walk in that simplicity of just trust and knowledge. And when you do that, you are going to move. You are going to grow. There's going to be transformation because your mind and your heart are going to be so simple, and you're going to be able to be focused on what's actually important. And things are going to change. This is 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 10. It says, "That is why we labor and strive, because we have put our hope in the living God, who is the Savior of all people, and especially of those who believe." We don't strive because we're in control. We don't strive because we want everything to work out just the way we think it should. We don't strive because that's what God expects of us, is to make everything work out just the way we want. We strive because he's already simplified. He's already done this beautiful thing to allow us to walk in the simple gospel. And so we strive because we get to, because it's beautiful, because we're already free. And this is the mindset that God's calling all of us to live in, because that's the mindset that actually moves and grows and transforms and changes. And so today, as we close, I just encourage you to ask yourself a few questions. And I think I'll actually, Adam, if you want to come up and just play a little bit of acoustics, I want to give you guys just a little bit of time here at the end if you want. The first thing I would love for you to ask is, what have I allowed the enemy to make complicated in my life? What area of my life just feels so complicated, so chaotic, so confusing? And understand and own the fact that there's probably something that Jesus has taught that you're not fully embracing yet. And that's okay. And this is not shame for you guys, because we all have this area. But there's an area of your life then that there's freedom that you can have for that area. And so you can start to think, how did Jesus make this area simple? What did he teach? What did he say? What did he do that gives me the freedom to really simplify how I think about this area? And I'm going to choose to believe it with everything I have. And kind of along with that, what are my cycles and pattern of thinking or feeling or even saying that I see I'm just going in circles here? I just am stuck in this. Because that's also going to indicate a place where you need Jesus, his teaching, his words, to break that and let you move past it. We've all had deep hurts and really difficult issues in life in which we've found ways to cope, found ways to just get through it, but that's not the heart of Jesus Christ, for you to just cope, just to get through. He wants you to be whole and healed and free, but we need his words and his teaching. And so if you guys would stand, I just want to pray with you. Father, I pray that you allow us to be people and be a church that can move. And God, not just physically, but actually grow and progress and transform, where we can look back at our life in a year or 2 years and say, wow, I'm not the same person I used to be. There's been a change. And God, we know that in order for us to be free to do that, we have to let you simplify so many things. But Jesus, I thank you that you've already done the work of that. What you did on the cross made things so incredibly simple for us that it's our choice to believe, to let go of the patterns that we've been stuck in for so long, of how we think and how we talk and how we feel. And Jesus, right now, I just pray that you allow us to be free of that we would be a people that move, that grow. And Lord, not that we're going to be perfect, not that we're ever going to arrive, but that's what your word says, that the life of the righteous is like a rising sun. It just gets brighter and brighter and brighter. And God, that's what I pray for our life, is that we just continue to grow, that we don't get stagnant. But Lord, we need to be free. If we're stuck, if we're trapped, we can't grow. And so, God, we know how the enemy wants us to just be frazzled and chaotic and stuck. And I just pray that, Lord, again, metaphorically, you just go through our house, You help us throw away what we don't need. You help us organize what is needed so that when it's time to move, we're ready and we're able to grow and move and transform. But we need your help. And so, Jesus, right now, we give our hearts over to you. Speak into our hearts. God, right now, and I pray that each person here specifically knows the area that has gotten way too complicated. And that right now you speak the exact words to just make it simple and clear and beautiful and peaceful in their life because of the work that you did on the cross. We pray this in your name. Amen. Amen. As we kind of close the service, there will be people up here to pray, and Adam's going to continue to play, and I encourage you, if you want to just take some time, take some time. You are dismissed. I just ask if you go, just kind of go out into the commons before you start talking real loud, just for the people who want a little extra time in here. But I'm so glad that you guys came, and God bless. We'll see you soon.
They laid down in Joseph's tomb, the entrance sealed by heavy stone. Messiah still and all alone. Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Praise his name forevermore, for endless days we'll sing your praise. Oh Lord our God. On the third break of dawn, the Son of Heaven rose again, trampled death. Where is your sting? The angels roar for Christ the King. Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore, for endless days we'll sing